Assalamu alaikum everybody. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by CxO Global Forum. The topic is very interesting, a little different from our usual topics on IT, all fields related to the digital world. My name is Barrister Sahar Iqbal. I'm a corporate partner at Akhund Forbes, which is a top-ranked law firm in Pakistan. We have our panel today, and before I speak about the topic, I would just like to hand over the floor to our panelists, and each of them could briefly introduce themselves. We'll start with, in no particular order, we'll start with Ahmed Javid.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ahmed Javid. I'm CEO of Cytellite, which is a firm offering digital trust services in the Middle East, covering cybersecurity, digital privacy, and cyber resilience from past couple of decades. Thank you.
Arif, Mr. ArifShaikh.
Assalamu alaikum. Harish here. I've been working in Progatix as a CIO, and we are basically a software house with IT on an add-on. We are working in the USA since last 23 years now, and our strength is basically customization on any type and every type. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. KhurramSaif. Sorry, we can't hear you. At least I can't hear you.
Likewise.
It's a little faint. If you could speak a little louder, please.
Okay. This is KhurramSaif, and I am from healthcare industry and working as a group at IT infrastructure and telecommunications in Dr.Ziauddin group. So I am leading entire hospital, university, college, school, and editorial. So we bring in healthcare services and educational services. So I'm responsible for entire IT infrastructure related and telecommunication related projects and operations.
That's interesting. Thank you for joining us today. Mr. Ubaid Chauhdary.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Am I audible?
Yes. Walaikum
Okay, so Assalamu alaikum everybody. My name is Ubaid Chauhdary and I'm an HR professional, and I would always say that I'm an HR professional by choice. So worked across 7 industries in last 17 years and developed my forte in organizational development, designing, executive recruitment, and training and development. Personal coaching is also one of my forte, that one-on-one coaching for different employees in the client base that I'm doing. I worked across like 7 industries, I said. So last year in November 2023, I resigned from my last job and initiated my own project by the name of the Zero Gap, as the name itself suggests. So I'm working on filling in the effectiveness gaps with all of my clients. So that's all about it.
Interesting. Are you based in Pakistan?
Yeah, I'm based in Pakistan. I reside in Islamabad.
Okay. So we actually have a fairly diverse panel today. Somebody from the healthcare sector, and of course, Dr.Ziauddin Hospital. That's one of the most renowned hospitals in at least Karachi. I know I've spoken to Ahmed before. He's based outside Pakistan, but he brings with him a wealth of experience, and everybody knows Mr. ArifShaikh. I hear some background noise. Is it Mr. Khurram? Is it? Yeah. Okay. So today's topic is very interesting and something I've been sort of discussing a lot. It's the psychology of change management. Now, I think traditionally in our society, and this is a little different from mental health and mental well-being terms, which we're hearing more and more these days. And change, again, I think as a society, because we tend to be a little traditional and conservative, we don't speak a lot about change, where some of us are not comfortable with change. Some of us like change, and change is, I mean, when we're talking about change here, it's in the professional realm, but then change can be brought upon by different factors. I think the biggest change each of us saw in our respective lives was during the pandemic and COVID. I'm sure none of us anticipated COVID or the pandemic. We used to hear about pandemics once a century, but we actually lived through it, and it brought a lot of change in our lives, professional as well as personal. Some people were able to adapt fairly seamlessly and smoothly. For some, it was a life changing event, and they haven't been able to get back to their lives as it was before COVID. Um, and I think it takes emotional and mental strength to adapt to changes as well, especially when the change is not something what we were expecting. So more on this later, but I had a few questions just to keep today's topic a little more streamlined, and the floor is open. So please feel free to respond, and we have a relatively small panel, so we should be able to manage it fairly smoothly. So my first question is, and this is something that I touched upon, how do people generally respond to change, especially in a professional setting? I think, and before you answer, I think your answer will depend on your own personal response to change. But we're all professionals. We've been working for a number of years, and we've seen people react differently. So, what is in each of for each of you? What, in your view, should be, and again, there's no right way, but how should people react to change?
Acha, so if I may please take the lead to answer this question. Ever since I started off with my career back in 2006, I suppose, and my very first job was with a consulting company. एक चीज मैंने जो ऑब्जर्व की, सो चेंज मैनेजमेंट हैज बिकम मोर ऑफ अ jargon, और इसकी जो एक द स्पिरिट बिहाइंड दैट वाज एसेंशियली related to the betterment or to a continual improvement thing, wo spirit we have lost somewhere, being more jargonic. So, in my career, I worked across various organizations. जहाँ पे तमाम मैंने different organizations के साथ काम किया, उसमें there've been various kinds of changes. Uh, तीन तरह का मैंने response उसमें observe किया. अच्छा, एक तो इसमें माइंडसेट बहुत डिपेंड करता है. सो देयर इज अ बुक बाय द नेम ऑफ माइंडसेट, द न्यू साइकोलॉजी ऑफ सक्सेस. उसमें ग्रोथ माइंडसेट और फिक्स्ड माइंडसेट की बात की गई है. सो द माइंडसेट डिपेंड्स अ लॉट. अब ये जो माइंडसेट है, देयर आर पीपल हु आर एक्साइटेड फॉर द चेंज. ठीक है, लेट मी रेफर बैक टू द मूवी थ्री इडियट्स. उसमें वो जो आमिर खान का क्लिप है ना, कि वो जहाँ पे वो ही कम्स टू द टीचिंग हॉल, वहाँ पे आके वो दो वर्ड्स लिखता है और पूछता है कि जी आपने इनका वर्ड्स का मतलब बताना. एंड देन ही आस्क्स से, डिड समबडी गेट एक्साइटेड कि मैं अब यहाँ पर कुछ नया लिख रहा हूँ एंड वी विल लर्न समथिंग न्यू. सो वो जो एक्साइटमेंट एलिमेंट है, द पीपल विद द ग्रोथ माइंडसेट, दे हैव दैट एक्साइटमेंट एलिमेंट विद देम वंस अ चेंज इज अनाउंस्ड इन इट्स ट्रू स्पिरिट. और उसका एक जो आपका आई वुड से कि उसकी उसकी एसेंशियलिटी और बिजनेस नीड जब उसकी जस्टिफाइड हो जाती है, तो पीपल गेट एक्साइटेड. ओके, वी आर गोइंग टू लर्न समथिंग न्यू, आवर लिमिट्स आर गोइंग टू बी स्ट्रेच्ड, एंड वी विल बी एंडिंग अप इन अ better version of ourselves, both personally and professionally. Second are bystanders. So they have just parked themselves alongside the whole change canvas, and they are observing. अच्छा ठीक है, observe करते हैं, देखते हैं, let's go with the flow. देखा जाएगा, जो होगा उसको observe कर लेंगे. अच्छा, तीसरी जो है ना, वो है कैटेगरी, दे आर चेंज रेजिस्टेंट पीपल. अब चेंज रेजिस्टेंट पीपल में भी आई ऑब्जर्व टू काइंड्स ऑफ पीपल. नंबर वन, जो मैंने पहले बात की थी ग्रोथ और फिक्स्ड माइंडसेट की, उसमें जो फिक्स्ड माइंडसेट पीपल हैं, यू कैन क्लियरली आइडेंटिफाई देम के दे डू नॉट वांट टू चेंज. वो उनका कंफर्ट जोन का एक कोकून बना हुआ है, दे डोंट वांट टू लीव दैट. और दूसरे वो लोग हैं जो चेंज की अनसर्टेनिटीज, यानी जिसको आप कह लें कि जॉब इनसिक्योरिटीज, गेटिंग सुपरसीडेड, गेटिंग लेड ऑफ, उन अनसर्टेनिटीज की वजह से वो चेंज को रेजिस्ट कर रहे होते हैं. तो ये तीन तरह के बेसिकली लोग थे जो मैंने ऑब्जर्व किया इन माय प्रोफेशनल करियर, जो चेंज का डिफरेंट तरह का हमें रिस्पॉन्स आता है.
I think you've given a very comprehensive response. And before I move on to the other panelist, I agree with you. And it's very interesting that you've categorized them into these three categories. But I think an overall comment is those who are excited. So your first category is somebody who have a growth mindset, who has a growth mindset, and they're excited about change. I think that's good. But then some people, Khurram, if you could just mute your, because I think there's some background noise or somebody speaking. So I think the first category, those people who get excited, I think they need to balance it with a little stability in their lives as well, right? So change is, yes, it's exciting, and maybe they get bored easily. Their boredom threshold is low, and they don't like monotony and the same routine every day. But they need to balance it a little bit with stability. Ahmed or Arif Saab, Khurram, if you would like to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to take this second. So, what has been said is like, the normally what the sort of mindsets we have like around us, like when we are working in the groups in the organizations as well. And I mean, as Bats have spoken about the people side of it, and then I'll speak about the organizational change point of view as well. That how the change is generally perceived within the organizational setting itself, because generally such organizations where you'll find a lot of the isolation, and that strategic decisions has been taken in the closed rooms, are not been shared with the employees, and all those, they usually like do not consider the factor of like human side of it, that how the change will be perceived by the people. It's a very normal perception about people, that mean everyone from psychological behavior point of view is they live, or they love to live within their comfort zone. So the element of the factor of surprise actually hits everyone. So if the change is is well designed and communicated, so I think it's better perceived. So we, while designing any organizational change, we need to consider all these factors, while from a the people perspective. uh, Such organization which are have a sort of a toxic environment, and people are like just finding a ways to blame each other and all that, it's difficult to navigate through these kind of communications. So here we need to understand what sort of like what actually triggers such kind of change, to enable a change. So there are two types which I usually define in my own definition, is one is which is triggered through a chance, and one is by choice. So one is well thought of by choice, which is a well thought of decision taken by the leadership, and it's can be designed, but the communication can be planned in a way that to onboard the related stakeholders, so that people who gonna be affected with that change will not be hit through the surprise. So the uncertainty element will be taken care of well. But the other side, which is by chance, for example, like let's take an example of pandemic, and the newly became the those sort of managers who were newly became the managers that time. They were very excited to lead the teams and all that, and suddenly the whole setting got changed, and they would not been very comfortable in sitting in front of the screens and leading the teams and communicating and all that. So that turned out to be a completely a failure as a leader, or as a so it's not actually was a failure for leader, it was a failure for from the acceptance or adaptability of that change perspective. So the key element here for the change perspective is that element of uncertainty. If we can handle that with respect to the receiving end mindset, as Ubaid said, I think we can handle better.
You've made some very valid points, and I agree with you. It depends on our work environment. So if you sort of spoke in the context of an organization, it it depends on the people we're working with, how toxic or how conducive the work environment is. And also, I think on past experience, if somebody has struggled or worked very hard to reach a certain level, and then a change happens which is caused by chance, then that will really sort of push him out of his comfort zone, and he will not adapt himself to it very easily. I think also in our country, it our culture, our society, and Mr. Ubaid mentioned a second category, which is bystander, which is a bystander who just sits back, observes, jo hona hai ho jayega. I think a little bit there's also sort of a religious side to it, कि again, I won't go too much into it, but I think as part of our society and culture, we hear that you work hard, but then what's written in your destiny will happen, and there's only a certain extent to which you can bring about a change.
Allah
But
Malik hai.
G
Gee,
G.
when I just want to add on that, if you kindly allow that, the people who follow this herd psychology, but that's actually is the real reason, core reason of a lot of failures of these organizational changes. They
That's
are
true,
the
and I
most
think
bigger hurdle of enabling a change in a more effective way.
yes, and again in our religion, there's also a concept of doing everything you can and then Allah Malik. So there's this entire concept. Um, Arif Saab, do you have anything to add to this?
जी जी बिल्कुल। देखिए, बड़ा एक मशहूर हमारा जो है ना एक पाकिस्तान में एक जुमला चला था कि तब्दीली आ रही है।
Hmm. I think that's the
तो ये
biggest
हाँ
non-change we've seen.
तो, तो उससे जो है ना हमें समझ में आना चाहिए कि जो तब्दीली है उसको हम लोग कितना कबूल करने वाले लोगों में से हैं। उसको हम किस तरह देखते हैं, ठीक है? अब मेरे हिसाब से ना, मैं क्योंकि हम सब अपनी अपनी पर्सनल राय दे रहे हैं, मेरे हिसाब से बेसिकली जो है तब्दीली या चेंज जिसे हम कहते हैं, वो 2 फैक्टर है। एक वो जो पुराने हमारे जैसे जो बाबा हो चुके हैं, वो कहते हैं नहीं यार अब कोई नई चीज़ सीखने की मेरी हिम्मत नहीं है। ये जैसे चीज़ें चलनी है चलने दो, अल्लाह मालिक है चीज़ें चलती रहेंगी। और जो सेकंड जो न्यू जनरेशन आ रही है ना, उसको चेंज चाहिए। वो डिमांड कर रहे हैं
Yes,
कि कि वो कहते हैं कि नहीं यार हमें टेक्नोलॉजी अडॉप्ट करनी है, वी नीड इट।
yes.
ठीक है? वो अब कहते हैं हम रजिस्टर्स पे काम नहीं कर सकते, हम प्रिंट आउट्स नहीं कर रहे, वी नीड अ सिस्टम, वी नीड एन ईआरपी सॉल्यूशन, वी नीड अ
Hmm.
पेपरलेस एनवायरनमेंट। हमें
Hmm.
ना मुख्तलिफ चीज़ें चाहिए। तो मेरे हिसाब से 2 कैटेगरीज हैं।
Hmm.
वो पुराने लोग जो बड़ी मुश्किल से, यानी जो अपने ऑडियो कैसेट से लेकर अब पता नहीं कहाँ तक पहुँच गए हैं, MP3 वगैरह सब पास कर चुके हैं। और एक जो जनरेशन आई जिन्हें पता ही नहीं है कि जी वो वीडियोस हम किस तरह देखते थे,
Hmm.
और उनके लिए तो सारी चीज़ें मोबाइल पे अवेलेबल हैं। तो देयर इज़ अ
Hmm.
बिग गैप नाउ।
Hmm.
वो जो चेंज व्हाट वी अडैप्टेड,
Hmm.
आई मीन हम लोग की एक उम्र हो चुकी है इस फील्ड के अंदर। व्हाट वी हैव अडैप्टेड वाज व्हाट वी हैव सीन द चेंज सिंस
Yes.
80s 90s 2000 एंड नाउ 2020।
Hmm.
That's a whole different thing. The whole generation,
Absolutely.
our generation, we have faced the most change.
That's exactly. We've been at the
अच्छा,
crux in the crossroads of a lot of change.
एग्जैक्टली। अच्छा, इसमें वही लोग जिन्होंने अपने आप को उस चेंज के साथ चेंज करा, उस
Yes, they're
तब्दीली
the
के साथ
ones who are
तब्दील
able to
करा,
move on. Hmm.
एग्जैक्टली। तो हम बैठे हुए यहाँ पे आज डिस्कशन कर रहे हैं,
Hmm.
वरना हमारे अपने जैसे सपोज हम सब के क्लास में क्लासमेट्स वगैरह थे, हैं बल्कि अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह सब हैं, तो उनमें बहुत कम लोग हैं जिन्होंने अपने आप को तब्दील करा होगा।
Hmm.
मेजॉरिटी जस्ट वेंट फॉर द नॉर्मल जॉब्स।
Hmm.
वो टेक्नोलॉजी में ड्रिवन नहीं होते, उनको सिर्फ एक टूल के तौर पे दिया जाता है, यार आपने इसमें डेटा पंच करना है एंड यू विल गेट योर रिजल्ट्स।
Hmm. Hmm.
व्हाट इज
That's true.
हैपनिंग बिहाइंड द स्क्रीन उनको अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं होती है।
That's true.
अभी भी मेरे पास एक क्लाइंट आया, बड़ा परेशान। ही वाज आस्किंग मी कि यार मैं 2 ईआरपी सॉल्यूशन ले चुका हूँ एंड दे हैव बीन फेलियर। मैंने कहा ओके, क्यों? कहते हैं यार मेरे पास जो स्टाफ बैठा है दे आर नॉट विलिंग।
Okay.
हमने ऑरिकल लिया है या कुछ और 1-2 प्रोडक्ट्स लेकर आए, हमने इसको ट्राई करने की कोशिश करी, बट इवेंचुअली आफ्टर 3 to 4 months वी फेल्ड। मैंने कहा इसका बहुत आसान सा हल है। कह रहे हैं क्या? मैंने फायर कर दो। ये सिनेरियो विद ड्यू रिस्पेक्ट उबैद भाई, क्योंकि एचआर वाले तो बुरा ना मान जाए, वो असल में एम्प्लॉयज के हिसाब का थोड़ा सा ख्याल रखना पड़ता है ना।
मैं इसमें बाद में कुछ चीज ऐड करना चाहूंगा, बट
श्योर
आप
श्योर
अपनी
श्योर।
बात मुकम्मल कीजिए।
Let Arif Saab complete and we'll move
हाँ,
to
जी
Khurram
जी।
Saif as well. जी.
उसमें बेसिकली होता है क्या है कि एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, बहुत बड़ी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन पाकिस्तान की, उनके पास जो कहा जी आपने जो दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा जो सॉफ्टवेयर है ईआरपी का, दैट यू हैव टू बी इम्प्लीमेंट, एसएपी की बात कर रहा हूँ मैं। तो उन्होंने कहा अच्छा ठीक है हम कर लेते हैं। बड़ी मुश्किल से उसको फैक्ट्री के एक पोर्शन में, तो मेजॉरिटी सेक्टर उसके अंदर उन्होंने डिप्लॉय करा। इट टुक देम मोर देन अ ईयर एंड समथिंग। मैं उस प्रोजेक्ट में मौजूद था। जब उसको दूसरे फैक्ट्री में लेकर जाने लगे तो वहाँ के लोगों ने स्ट्रिक्ट रेजिस्ट कर दिया कि जी हम इसको डिप्लॉय नहीं करने देंगे। आई मीन द होल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन स्टूड अप और उन्होंने कहा जी हमें चाहिए ही नहीं, हम इसके बगैर खुश हैं। तो कहा नहीं ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता। अच्छा, ओनर जो था ये वो स्ट्रिक्ट, तो कहा नहीं या तो ये चलेगा या तुम लोग चलोगे। दैट वाज हिज एंगल एंड वेरी स्ट्रिक्ट. मेरा ख्याल में उन्होंने 60-70 लोगों को फायर भी किया था कि नहीं आप यूज नहीं करना चाह रहे, हाँ यू कैन गो होम, अपना हिसाब किताब करो. दूसरी बात ही नहीं सुनी. वो जो चेंज थी ना फ्रॉम द ओनर, दैट
Hmm.
चेंज द होल इंडस्ट्री.
Correct.
ही टुक दैट स्टेप. उसने
He
वो
took that.
देखा कि जो लोग रेजिस्ट कर रहे थे, क्योंकि उनके पास
Hmm.
कोई रीजन नहीं थी.
Exactly.
अच्छा, जब वो चेंज हो गई, जब वो प्रोसेस चलना स्टार्ट हुए, तो उनको पता चला जी लीकेज कहाँ कहाँ थे,
Hmm.
कहाँ कहाँ इन्वेंट्री में इश्यूज आ रहे थे, कहाँ कहाँ सेल में इश्यूज आ रहे थे. एक बहुत बड़ा एक ग्रुप जो था वो सामने आ गया.
Hmm. Right.
सिस्टम से, देखिए सिस्टम से दो ही वजह है मेरे पास कि लोग उसको इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं करना चाहते. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल,
Hmm.
अगेन वो जैसे सब भाइयों ने मेरे कहा कि दे आर कंफर्ट, कि यार मैं
Hmm.
कंफर्टेबल हूँ इसके अंदर, मुझे चेंज नहीं करनी, आई हैव टू रीलर्न एवरीथिंग अगेन. मुझे
Hmm.
यार चीज़ें ढूंढना पड़ेंगी, सीखना पड़ेंगी,
Hmm.
वो एक तकलीफ देह माल होता है. दूसरा, कुछ लोगों का ना हिसाब किताब चल रहा है बैक एंड के ऊपर,
Hmm.
वो पकड़ में आ जाता है. क्योंकि आप सिस्टम से जीत नहीं सकते, एनी काइंड ऑफ सिस्टम, यू कैनॉट बीट अ सिस्टम.
Right. And I think
बेसिक ये
that's
इशू
how,
होता है.
G,
दैट
very valid. And you're right that you started off by saying that in 2018, the country was expecting a change, but that change, the people who wanted to bring that change couldn't fight the system. And I think the example that you've given about one man taking a stance, which actually helped the entire industry, and it brought on the surface leakages, etc. I think, and I think you also mentioned maybe some people also resist change because, as you said, and Ahmed, you mentioned herd mentality. So the example that Arif Saab was given about, the other organization not accepting that change was maybe also a result of that herd mentality. And the CEO realized that he needed a stick, he needed to bulldoze his way through. And I think some people also resist change because they feel that it will, that change will come at a cost. And maybe some people have seen so much upheaval and so much change and disruption in their personal lives that they want their professional lives to be stable and secure. But we'll speak on that later. So, Khurram Saab, sorry, coming to you after a while, but do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak after 23 minutes. It's okay. So I believe change is inevitable. See, because as you know, as what other honorable speakers are saying, that we are from generation X and now it is generation Z. The changes we have viewed, the changes we have been through, and the changes we all have been through till now in last 40 to 50 years, these are inevitable. So if I think the main problem is where the ones who do not intend to change is everywhere unless and until the individual or the organization started to change, they can't improve themselves. Who heard about ECFA? Who heard about Nokia? Who heard about AMP's solution? They resist the change, they are nowhere. See, the digitization takes place. So majority of the things are being changed because everything is being changed. I believe the resistance to change is a natural defense mechanism, but the peoples which tend to preferably stability and predictability, they are the ones who bring some changes. And it's very essential to come out of your comfort zones and avoid the perceived risk so the change could be attainable, right? So I believe the fear of failure in everyone, or the those who take the risk uh, go through. Those who don't take the risk, they are nowhere. The fear of failure or losing status can only contribute the resistance. So I believe if anyone is open to change, if anyone is accepting the change, he or she exists in now or in future as well, because they are showing their acceptance. Unless and until, see what Mr. Arif Sheikh was saying, in a banking mechanism, after every 2 years, entire bank staff is replaced with the new ones. Why? because they want to see, they want to audit, they want to see if there is anything going under the table. They want to check if there is any discrepancies. They want to check if there are any unverified ledgers. So this is the main thing. In healthcare industry, everything is going. If you talk about biomedical, if you talk about IT, everything is being updated because in healthcare industry, our doctors at Ziauddin Hospital can't check any of the staff or patients unless and until they have the proper system. If the system is down, if their system a link is down, they can't check a single patient because the history is being maintained at that portal. So previously they were all being used on the system. So now everything is digital. Once we digitize everything, so if there is any outages, doctor is unable to check the patient. So this is the change. Mr. Arif, Mr. Ahmad talked about paperless environment. Mr. from HR also contributed on this. So unless and until each individual, each organization is intended to change, take the positive change, there will be no way. There are many names which don't exist right now, and they have been taken by any of them with our site. So that's the main factor.
I think you've mentioned a very sort of an interesting your view or your advocacy towards a change, and you mentioned in fairly black and white terms that those who don't take risk will see failure. And I'm glad that you mentioned your own experience in the healthcare sector. I mean, I think I'm sure all of us have unfortunately been to hospitals either for ourselves or for our family. And we do see, and I'm glad you mentioned this, and we do see or we hear or we're told that the system is down and they're not able to fetch our history, etc. I think in a country like Pakistan, and you're right, it's very important to digitize patient records and history. But then in a country like Pakistan, where infrastructure is not excellent and where hospitals also see a lag in infrastructure, sometimes for a patient it becomes a little overwhelming or frustrating to be told that the system is down and the doctors or the staff are not able to access their history because
You
somebody
are
who's visiting somebody
you
who's
are
visiting yes, and somebody who's visiting the hospital is not doing so for leisure. They're doing so because they're in pain and they want to be treated. And in a and I think I should have mentioned this early on that we're in a developing country, so we have a lot of potential and a lot of room to change and grow. But as Arif Saab said, we're also conscious of the boundaries and restrictions of a system that all of us are working in. Ubaid Saab, you wanted to, I think, add something.
Yes, so I would actually like to compliment what Arif साहब just quoted. आपने आरिफ साहब बात की थी system implementation की और digitization की. So I have been through with one of the examples in my recent most career jumps जहाँ पे मैंने काम किया. So the organization, it's a renowned organization in Pakistan, and when I joined the company, मैंने देखा कि वहाँ पर HR का कोई system implemented नहीं था. Not even the employee personal files, जो hard files होती हैं employees की, वो भी वहाँ पे exist नहीं करती थी. However, the system implementation was in such a rush कि वहाँ पर sales के लिए Salesforce implemented था, finance के लिए SAP module implemented था, and when I talked about कि हम SAP को ही SAP का जो success factor module है, we should implement the same for HR. They said no, that's way too costly. Let's go for another software. So we went for another software despite my resistance to that, but the decision was coming from the CFO desk, और CEO was convinced कि यहाँ पे हमें जो है ना वो इसको करना चाहिए. तो वो कॉस्ट सेविंग का जो एक एलिमेंट होता है ऑब्वियसली वो था, बट वो सिस्टम इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, अब आप क्या ये समझते हैं कि एक इदारे में 3 से 4 सिस्टम्स पैरेलल चल रहे हैं और फिर उन सिस्टम्स की जो इंटीग्रेशन है उसको इस्टेब्लिश करने के लिए आपको एक अलग प्लेटफॉर्म चाहिए. सो यू आर अ टेक्नोलॉजिस्ट योरसेल्फ. आप ये समझ सकते हैं कि ये कितना ये चीज मैसअप हो गई होगी. And or मतलब as the luck would have it, it ended up in a mess. ठीक है, it ended up in a failure. अच्छा, रीजन क्या है चेंज के ऊपर जब आप बात करेंगे ना सर, देयर इज अ मैनेजमेंट गुरु आई फ्रीक्वेंटली फॉलो, साइमन सेनेक के नाम से, एंड ही एक्चुअली वंस डिस्क्राइब्ड अ गोल्डन सर्कल. कोई भी काम आपका जो है ना वो उस वक्त तक आपको इट वोंट बी अ सक्सेस अनलेस यू डिफाइन व्हाई यू वांट टू डू इट. So I work with a variety of clients. I work in services sector. I work in manufacturing. So whenever I go to a client for an HR project or an organizational development project, I question them. आप ये करना क्यों चाह रहे हैं? Are you trying to copy somebody? आपको problem क्या आ रहा है? So what's your problem statement? So that why thing is generally found missing. Yes, I do help them in identifying the why if there is a need, but वो जो why factor है वो missing होता है. That is exactly why ये जो हमारी जो uncertainty है, if you can sell your why to your employees, I think वो आपको एक बहुत बड़ा stepping stone दे देगा, आपको एक बहुत बड़ा jumping board दे देगा अपने जो change project है उसकी rationality को sell करने में. So that's what I wanted to add actually.
Ahmed, I think if you would like to add anything before I move on to the next question.
Yeah, I would like to echo the same thing. Is that not only the why thing is important. I think there have been in my professional experience when I have followed the 5 Ws. So starting from the why, that defines the purpose as well. Because more better you understand the problem statement, more better you will define the approach to solve that or address those things, and that will help you or give you more confidence to sell the same thing to your employees more better. Because if we are able to like educate them about the perceived benefits of those changed, then I think they will be able to convert the minds. It's the success factor is here, the converting the mindset from a resistance mindset to an enabler or contributor. So if we are able to present them the perceived benefits of those change, I think they will become contributors. And a similar example, if I would like to quote, is that when I was in the bank and working as a head of IT audit, the bank was undergone a change, a major transformation of two systems. One was the payment card system, and other was more even financially critical, which was treasury system. So we faced the same challenges. There was it was came all from the top, and everything was happening in rush. किसी को भी properly वो discussion नहीं करने को understand नहीं किया जा रहा. What are the common challenges? तो वो जो हमारे newly onboarded project manager थे, he was from UK, so he happened to understand the human element of it. So he started sitting with the operational. He defined the operational team. He started understanding the operational challenges of the team, which are actually involved in the functional duties. So what that basically helped them identifying those जो आरिफ साहब ने भी एक दफ़ा इशारा किया कि जो सिस्टम ऑटोमेशन के थ्रू जो लीकेजेस हैं सिस्टम की, और स्पेशली बैंकिंग में बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है to identify the revenue leakages, and especially in the area of treasury or payment card systems. So the idea is all about if we are able to design that whole change by answering those 5 Ws, that why we are doing it, who will do that, who will get involved, where, when, and where, and what is the expected outcome, and how we will achieve that. So then we will be able to better sell to the employees and the potential customers if we are in a professional services or consulting role. Otherwise, I think it's not easy to change or bring someone from out of their comfort zone and changing their mindset from a resistant to a contributor.
That's right. And I think, yes, sorry, your voice, yes, you absolutely did. You always do. I think Khurram Saab mentioned he highlighted the sort of generational gap which we all speak about. That right now our Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, they want change, whether they need it or not, whether it's good or not. Um, there's this mindset, and then we see our older generation who resist change even if they know it's good because they're just not comfortable with it. So I think I should move on to my next question because we've discussed this one in a lot of detail. Um, and maybe we've already spoken about it, but Arif Saab, what are some common emotions that you see human resources or your team members experience during a system change or an organizational change?
अच्छा, ये सबका एक कॉमन सा फैक्टर है। जैसे उबैद भाई ने कहा कि जिस सिस्टम अगर हम चेंज करते हैं, कोई भी हम चीज़ इम्प्लीमेंट करने की कोशिश करते हैं, तो अगेन मैं वही कहता हूँ ना, दो चीज़ें सामने आती हैं। एक, वो जो पुराने बाबे बैठे होते हैं उनको सबसे ज़्यादा परेशानी होती है, वो एक बहुत तकलीफ में आता है। तो उनका बेसिक जो इमोशन, जो जज्बाती फैसले होते हैं इस बुनियाद पर होते हैं, यार मुझे दोबारा करना पड़ेगा, अब इस उम्र में जाके मैं करूँगा, वो एक बहुत बड़ा फैक्टर काउंट करता है। अच्छा, जो न्यू जनरेशन है, जेन जी जिसे हम कह रहे हैं, उनको चेंज क्यों पसंद है, उसकी एक बुनियादी वजह मैं आपको बताता हूँ। वो बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग सी चीज़ है, उसको जरा गौर करिएगा। जितनी भी जेन जी है ना, दे आर लेजी। दे वांट सोल्यूशन कि उनका काम बैठे बैठे सीट पे हो जाए। यानी वो इतना सुस्त है। मैं अपने कज़न के एक छोटी सी मिसाल दे रहा हूँ। कज़न के गए दावत पे, तो उसकी वाइफ उसको बड़े बेटे को बोली, कहती है रोटियां ले आ, रोटियां ले आ। कहता मैं लाता हूँ लाता हूँ। जो कहते भाई सब कुछ होगी, अब तो रोटियां ला दे। तो उसने फूड पांडा करा, 3-4 गली पीछे तंदूर है, वो फूड पांडा वाला रोटियां ला के डिलीवर करता, उसको 50 रुपए दे देता है। हमें दैट्स अ लेजीनेस। वो जो टेक्नोलॉजी अडॉप्टेशन की हम बात कर रहे हैं ना, अब बच्चा जो है, ही गॉट चैट जीपीटी नाउ। एआई की हम बात करें ना, एआई। अब मेरे बच्चे, मेरी 2 लड़कियां हैं, उन्हें कोई भी चीज चाहिए होती है, वो अपनी माँ का दिमाग नहीं खाती। और ना मेरा लैपटॉप ऑन करना, उसके अंदर चैट जीपीटी पे जाना, एंड दिल गेट द एवरीथिंग। टीचर्स को पता भी नहीं है, उन्होंने वहां से कॉपी पेस्ट मार के लिख के उसको दे के आ जाना है। दैट्स इट। देयर लाइफ इज गेटिंग ईजियर। हम लोग लाइब्रेरीज जाते थे, वहां बैठते थे, स्टडीज करते थे, बुक्स ढूंढते थे, देखना पड़ता था। यूनिवर्सिटीज की लाइब्रेरियां आबाद होती थी। अब जाके देखो, यूनिवर्सिटीज की लाइब्रेरी में कुछ भी नहीं होता। बहुत रेयर होता है कि कोई वहां पर घूम रहा हो। तो चेंज जिसकी हम बात कर रहे हैं ना, वो दो फैक्टर है। जो जेनजी जो चेंज चाहिए, उसको बेसिकली उठना नहीं है, वो बैठे बैठे सारे काम हो जाए। आई मीन दे आर वेरी हैप्पी टू वर्क फ्रॉम होम। उसकी जान जाती है कि यार मुझे ऑफिस जाना पड़ेगा, मैं घर से क्यों नहीं कर रहा। तो कोरोना के अंदर जो उनको प्लस पॉइंट मिला, दैट वाज फॉर वर्क फ्रॉम होम। कि हाँ भाई, घर में बैठे बैठे सारे काम हो रहे हैं, यार मुझे ऑफिस जाने की क्या जरूरत है। कोरोना के बाद वी एक्चुअली इन माई ऑफिस प्रोगेटिक्स के अंदर हमने इन्फोर्स करा कि दैट यू हैव टू कम टू ऑफिस। सॉफ्टवेयर हाउस है, लोगों ने हमें कहा यार क्या बैकवर्ड आपकी पॉलिसी है, अब तो हर कोई वर्क फ्रॉम होम की पॉलिसी अपना गया। नहीं, आपको आना पड़ेगा। एंड वी फाइट फ्यू पीपल्स कि नहीं, आप नहीं आ रहे, यूर आउट। तो उनको दोबारा लेकर आना, आप लोग ने भी फेस किया होगा, एक बड़ा टफ चैलेंज था। खासतौर पे जो सॉफ्टवेयर इंडस्ट्रीज में या टेक्नोलॉजी इंडस्ट्रीज में, तो एक बहुत बड़ा इशू था हमारे लिए। तो उन सबको लाना पड़ा। तो वो सारी चीजें जो है ना, वो चेंज वो वेरी करता है कि हम किस टर्म्स में और किस कंडीशन में उसको यूज कर रहे हैं। हम नॉर्मल जो चेंज की बात कर रहे हैं टेक्नोलॉजी वाइज, दैट्स अनदर थिंग। ह्यूमन फैक्टर पे अगर हम बात करते हैं, अगेन ह्यूमन फैक्टर में दो चीजें। पुराने लोग, आज हम लोग यही कहते हैं कि यार आज की जो जनरेशन है वो ना क्रिकेट खेलती है, ना बाहर जाती है, उसको बस मोबाइल दे दो, उसकी सारी जिंदगी मोबाइल में गुजर जाएगी। उसकी चेंज वो है कि वो मोबाइल के अंदर सारी चीजें, पूरी दुनिया देख रहा है, सारी नॉलेज वो अपने मोबाइल पे ले रहा है, टाइम पास अपने मोबाइल पे कर रहा है। उसकी चेंज वो है, एंड दैट्स हॉरेबल। दैट चेंज इज हॉरेबल। फिजिकली, मेंटली, वो जेनजी जो है ना, वो मजीद नीचे होती जा रही है। ये अब वो देखें, अगेन हम चेंज जिसकी हम बार बार बात कर रहे हैं, वो चेंज के फैक्टर्स हैं, उसके प्रोज एंड कॉन्स हैं। फायदा भी अपनी जगह है, नुकसान भी हैं। मुझे जाती तौर पे नुकसान ज्यादा नजर आ रहे हैं। हम जितनी टेक्नोलॉजी को बढ़ाते जा रहे हैं, ठीक है, हमारी जिंदगी आसान होती जा रही है, इश्यूज रिजॉल्व होते जा रहे हैं, थिंग्स आर मूविंग, बिजनेस इज गेटिंग गुड, जैसे उबैद भाई ने कहा जी, हर डिपार्टमेंट को एक अपना अलग सोल्यूशन चाहिए। HR को चाहिए एक सेपरेट चाहिए, फाइनेंस वाले को चाहिए एक सेपरेट चाहिए, डिफरेंट टेक्नोलॉजी डिफरेंट प्लेटफॉर्म पे होते हैं। अच्छा, हमारी वो जीत है, बिकॉज वी वर्क ऑन अ कस्टमाइजेशन इन्वायरमेंट। हम कहते हैं वो हमारे लिए तो बहुत अच्छा ही है, दैट्स माई बिजनेस ना, मैं उन सबको इंटीग्रेट करके दे दूंगा, हाँ ओके डन हो गया। बट रियलिटी ये अच्छा नहीं है। वो जो अलग अलग सॉफ्टवेयर यूज कर रहे हैं उनकी बेसिकली रीजन क्या है कि दे डोंट वांट टू चेंज। अगर कोई HR वाला है, माजरत का तो भाई, वो चाहता है यार मैंने जो पिछली ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में सॉफ्टवेयर यूज करा था वही यहाँ पे चले, क्योंकि आई एम यूज टू दैट, मैं चेंज नहीं होने वाला। अगर फाइनेंस का कोई बंदा आया, वो कहता है कि जी मैं फाइनेंस का ये सॉफ्टवेयर यूज कर रहा था, मुझे वही चाहिए, वो उसका यूज टू होता है। ठीक है, दिस इज फ्रॉम द टॉप। ये जो ऊपर से नीचे वाला चेंज नहीं कराएगा, ऊपर वाला चेंज कराएगा आके। एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को एक सिंगल प्लेटफॉर्म पे लाने के लिए इट्स अ वेरी बिग चैलेंज। कॉस्ट इफेक्ट होता है, डेफिनेटली कॉस्ट का फर्क पड़ता है। एक कॉस्ट डॉलर्स में जा रहा है, एक रुपीज में जा रहा है, तो कॉस्ट इफेक्ट होता है। बट एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में एक सॉफ्टवेयर चलाना, ये सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज होता है, सबसे बड़ा चेंज होता है। तो ये वेरी करता है।
You're right. And again, I think you gave an interesting perspective on Gen Z, and I can relate to it a little bit also. Because work from home initially was, I mean, you had to adapt to it, but then once you got used to it and you saw the convenience, it was a little difficult going back, especially, in a city like Karachi where there's so much traffic and dust and pollution on the road. All of us are getting road rage at some point or the other, and we just feel that the same work which we can do from home, just traveling back and forth, is it just makes us, it takes away from us. Khurram Saab, coming to you, and I think Arif Saab mentioned that it also depends on the industry or the sector we're talking about. I think you mentioned banks and healthcare, and I'm also aware that there is a mandated blackout period where employees have they are forced to take certain time off. Even if they're workaholics and they like coming to the office every day, they are asked to mandatorily take annual leaves so that the systems can be checked, and the organization can make sure there's no leakage. But do you have anything to add to the current question? Ji,
You are
I think, can you hear me?
oh, yes, I can hear you. The problem is that, see, the coin has two sides of the picture, right? What Mr. Arif Sheikh was describing, see, one, there is laziness, and second is adoption of technology. So what he's mentioning, that he is a lazy, but he tends to approach Food Panda to get the bread or rotis delivered at home. So what do you think? Is he a lazy or is he a smart user? So it's it's two side of the coin. So we need to see, if we are talking about the changes in banking industry, in the changes in the healthcare industry, it is, as I said, there is a risk involved. Basically, the fear of incompetence and loss of control and the job security at these places, the majority of the people, they worry that they don't adopt fast enough, or they think they are irrelevant in the new system. That's the main thing. So what Mr. Arif and Mr. Ahmad was saying, that change come from the leadership. You know, there is a certain process, there is a certain technology, and when these processes comes across, when the new technology comes, the anxiety, the fear of change, the performance related issues, and employees' job stability or instability comes across every person's mind. So once these changes are being adopted, those who adopt those changes remains stick to the system. But the ones who don't adopt those, they are out of the system. So what Mr. Arif Sheikh was highlighting, about, we have implemented Ariba, we have implemented SAP, HCM, S4HANA with customer activity repository. Previously, the inventory was not tallied in my previous organization because there was a difference of inventory. There is no real-time synchronization. But once we implemented SAP S4 HANA, the inventory tallied, and the difference is no more. So what is kept over the shelf is absolutely appearing in the inventory. So if I talk about the change in the system, and even in my healthcare industry, once the data is there, the doctors, the consultants, the surgeons, they are very able to properly operate or consult their patients. If the system is not updated, if there is manual paperwork, they invest their time in finding the different pages where they have previously got, because there are hundred of employees, hundred of patients coming in, so it makes a major difference. So what I believe is that change is rapid. On again, one more thing, the paradigm shift. Paradigm shift is very important thing in everyone's life. You know, once you bring in one change, it is not easy or acceptable by the ones who are sitting at the other side of the chair. So you have to um, easily, very smoothly bring in some changes, and the main leader who is bringing the change, he should be smart enough to tackle those, and then the subordinates will embed and conclude and attain those things. That's my
That's a very important point, and this is something I mentioned in my organization as well. It is very very important for the change maker to take his team along. You cannot just turn up one day or overnight change everything. It's going to cause jitters amongst the team members. Um, and I think the reason why in our country we also see a little resistance to change is because we've seen so much economic upheaval in our country and so much upheaval at the macro level and factors which are beyond our control. Um, with rising unemployment, inflation, etc., with what's happening around the world, especially the last 1 year, we've seen increasing conflicts and wars, which we never thought we would see in 2024. I think that also sort of leads to a little bit of resistance. Vedsa, would you like to add anything, or shall I move on to my next question?
अच्छा देखिए इसमें आई वुड ऐड के 3 से 4 तरह के जो है ना फीलर्स आ रहे होते हैं एम्प्लॉयज़ को. सो आई एक्रोनिम्ड एज 4 FOUR. होता क्या है, एक चेंज आ रही है, अब एम्प्लॉय क्या फील कर रहा है कि मुझे इससे क्या आउटकम मिल सकता है. सक्सेस को एक साइड पर रखता हूँ. जो फियर फैक्टर है उसमें 4 एलिमेंट्स होते हैं. अगर आप इसको FOUR को एक्सप्लेन कर लें 4 को, तो फेलियर सबसे पहले कि मैं नए सिस्टम में सर्वाइव नहीं कर पाऊंगा. ठीक है. ओ ऑब्जेक्शंस, और मेरे पे जो है ना वो ऑब्जेक्शंस रेज होंगी मेरे काम के तरीके पे, या मेरी पर्सनालिटी पे, या मेरे सिस्टम के यूसेज पे. एंड देन देयर इज अ फियर ऑफ अननोन. अगर आप यू को एक्सप्लेन करें, सो देयर इज अ यू अननोन. वो जो एक अननोन, फियर ऑफ अननोन हम कहते हैं, अनजाना खतरा जिसको आप उर्दू में कहते हैं, या जो हमें बचपन से डराया जाता था. छोटे होते ना हमें पेरेंट्स डराते थे, दरवाज़ा नहीं खोलना, अंदर वो मुख्तलिफ चीज़ों के नाम लिए जाते थे, अंदर वो होता. तो हम आज तक यही समझते हैं कि इस दरवाजे के पीछे जो है ना वो कोई डरावनी चीज़ बैठी हुई है, चेंज का दरवाज़ा नहीं खोलना. दैट फियर ऑफ अननोन. एंड देन देयर इज अ फियर ऑफ रिजेक्शन. सो ये जो 4 का फैक्टर है, आई ऑब्जर्व के ये वो 3 से 4 डिफरेंट तरह के इमोशंस होते हैं जो एम्प्लॉय फील कर रहा होता है वंस चेंज इज बीइंग इम्प्लीमेंटेड. और ख़ास तौर से ऐसी सूरत में वेयर चेंज कम्स आउट ऑफ अ ब्लू, उसका एक्सप्लेनेशन पहले मौजूद नहीं होती या उसके ऊपर कम्युनिकेशन नहीं होती. सो दैट्स माय टेक ऑन इट.
Very interesting points, and I think this comes from your experience as a coach and a trainer. There's a little bit of a generational, I don't know what to call it. There's certain values have been passed from generation to generation as well, and we need to sort of break out from those shackles. Ahmed, would you like to add anything to this, or should I raise my next question?
Sure, I think this is the endeavor which, if we start exploring more and more, there is we can go all the way in the rabbit hole. One element to highlight more, just to add on, is the element of empathy as well, because understanding the people from their point of view, because how usually, like in that setting, I mean, they deal with objections, how they deal with failures or rejections. I'll just share a one common example, like that recently in my organization, when we just moved from one location to the other, and that also has resulted in some sort of a discomfort among the people, because we moved from the closed cabin offices to our open hall environment, where we felt like special, like sort of a privacy insecure feeling with among the ladies side of it, from a cultural perspective, and then those people who were very um, talkative or extrovert, and they were openly discussing some sensitive discussions, gossips about others, so they would not been able to do that among in that setting. So that causes some sort of an anxiety as well. So how to deal those kind of situations? So these kind of things needs to be considered, that any the very first element which we need to understand here in order to introduce any sort of change, whether it's a system related, though it's misperceived that it's just a bringing a software, is that's it. Technology affects people, the way we do business, the way we operate, and then of course it's basically improvise our processes as well. So any change is basically affecting the PPT element, which is people, process, and technology. So the people is the most important thing, where you generally it's generally is a top-down approach, but with no understanding of what are the ground challenges down there. So if we do not answer those five W's properly, we will not be able to convert that or we will not be able to enable that paradigm shift which Khurram Saab mentioned, that which we need to do that effort to shift the paradigm from a resistant to contributor.
I think very interesting and very valid points. Our physical environment also impacts our reaction to change. And it's very interesting that you mention a closed cabin office versus an open plan, open space office. I'm somebody whose physical environment matters to her a lot. I think again there are arguments to in favor of and against both sides, but I personally feel that if you're working in a closed cabin, you might as well work from home. Of course, when you're working in an open space or an open plan office, there's a lot of distraction and noise, and there are chatters and talkative people. So there should be a concept of breakout rooms, where if you need that closed space to work, you can always go to breakout rooms. So I think it depends from person to person and organization to organization. But what is very important is that a change should not be in the interest of one person only. I mean, often in our country, in our culture, we see that the owner or the employer of a firm, especially if it's a closely held or a family firm, the change is usually in the interest of one person or one particular group. In an organization, it's a little more far reaching and a little more equal. But when employees or workers see that the change is only being affected to benefit one person or one group, there will be resistance as well. So that's something that needs to be considered by employers, especially when we see a lot of brain drain happening in the country. It's something that Arif always speaks about. That he's usually he feels that there are not enough good resources. There's work, but not enough resources. So Arif Saab, would you like to add anything to this, or shall we move to our next question?
नहीं छोड़ें, अगले सवाल पे जाके क्या करेंगे, टाइम नहीं बचा आपके पास
Uh,
तो। अच्छा।
I can raise one thing.
जी
What
जी।
point of view do you guys have for the 26th Amendment that the country leadership is doing right now? See, this is also a change, which is not. This is what you are talking about, Ms. Sahar. So this is to incentivize some group of people,
Yes.
some leadership.
Yes,
So, what
that's
do you
how our
say
country is
about?
being run.
Yes, that's what the change is, which is not acceptable by the people, but only acceptable and to incentivize only the people sitting and leading Pakistan. That's it.
That's
देखिए
why we,
इसमें
exactly,
ना
that's
थोड़ा
why
सा
all of us say there's so much potential, so much opportunity. We've gone back in time. It was our turn to change from underdeveloped to developing into developed. But because of the policies, in fact, a few years ago, somebody mentioned that every time we have a new government, which is not the same as the previous government, they'll change everything. Even if no change is required, they'll change everything just to sort of on paper show that they're doing something. What is needed in our country is long term stability, implementation, and enforcement, not change. We have enough laws. We need them to be implemented, enforced, and for things to progress and work in tandem. Um, my
I think
next
we are
question,
digressing from
yes,
the
we are.
topic.
Yeah,
Actually, हमारी
exactly.
जो
Which is why
organizational change के ऊपर discussion
I
थी.
know, which is why I was moving on to our next question.
Okay.
And I think this probably will be the last one, given that we only have 5 minutes. What, um, in your experience, or generally, how can leaders use emotional intelligence? And again, this is a concept we always talk about IQ, but emotional intelligence is also a very important concept. How can employers use this concept to manage psychological impact of change?
ये जो सवाल है ना ये बहुत ज़बरदस्त है
जी
और
आरिफ साहब।
बेसिकली इसके ऊपर जो है ना सारी चीज़ें डिपेंड करती हैं क्योंकि लीडरशिप जो है ना वो मेन फैक्टर है आपका और देखिए चेंज के हवाले से एक बड़ा मशहूर अगेन वही जुमला हमारे पास कि तब्दीली आ नहीं रही तब्दीली आ चुकी तो वो वाकई हकीकत ये है कि तब्दीली आ चुकी है नाउ वी हैव टू चेंज आइदर आई लाइक इट और नॉट मुझे बहुत सारी चीज़ें करना पड़ती हैं अपने इन्वायरमेंट को स्टेबल करने के लिए लोगों को अट्रैक्ट करने के लिए फॉर बिजनेस एंड एवरीथिंग हम जिस एज पे हमने काम करना स्टार्ट करा था हमारे पास कोई एक सेपरेट जगह नहीं होती थी जहाँ पे हम स्पोर्ट्स खेल सकें डब्बू नहीं होता था फूसबॉल नहीं होती थी टेबल टेनिस नहीं होता था नाउ वी आर प्रोवाइडिंग एवरीथिंग इन हाउस ऑफिस के अंदर ऑफिस मौजूद है मेरे बहुत सारे ऐसे कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर्स में जाके देखें बड़े बड़े ऑफिस में आप लोगों ने भी देखा होगा जहाँ पे जिम्स हैं पूरे के पूरे ना एक बड़ा पोर्शन उन्होंने जिम्स का बनाया हुआ है तो वाई ये क्यों देते हैं वो ये कहते हैं कि जी हम अपने एम्प्लॉय को हेल्थी इन्वायरमेंट देते हैं और मैं ये कहता हूँ अपने एम्प्लॉयमेंट को मैक्सिमम टाइम अपने पास रखने के लिए सब कुछ करता हूँ
Yes, I agree with you.
ठीक है देयर इज अ टू डिफरेंट थिंग हमने भी काम
Absolutely.
करा आज भी हम सारी जिंदगी काम करते हुए आ रहे हैं मुझे आज तक कोई ऐसा ब्रेक नहीं लेना पड़ता मैं जाकर टेबल टेनिस खेलूँ यानी इतना टाइम
सही बात।
फालतू मेरे पास निकले कि मैं जाकर डब्बू खेलूँ या टेबल टेनिस खेलूँ हमें लंच का टाइम सही से नहीं मिलता यार
That's right.
ठीक है ना
That's right.
तो ये एक बड़ा फैक्टर है और हमें उस जेन जी को देख के आगे मूव करना पड़ता है खुरम भाई ने जैसे कहा ना उस बच्चे की मिसाल में रोटी वाली दी उन्होंने कहा वो लेजीनेस थी या उसकी टेक्नोलॉजी का यूज था स्मार्टनेस थी तो खुरम भाई दो फैक्टर हैं दोनों अलग अलग चीजें यूजिंग टेक्नोलॉजी इन इंडस्ट्री इज डिफरेंट मगर जहां बच्चा आपका जहां आपकी यूथ खराब हो रही थी वो भी हमने आइडेंटिफाई करना है ये दो
Right.
डिफरेंट एस्पेक्ट्स हैं ठीक है फिजिकली
Yeah.
हमारा बच्चा जो है मेरी एक साइड बिजनेस मेरा अपना मेरे एक एचआर की ऑर्गेनाइजेशन मेरी एचआर कंपनी चल रही है व्हाट वी हैव सीन कि जिस तरीके से बच्चा जो है शफल हो रहा है शिफ्ट हो रहा है फ्रॉम वन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन सेकंड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एक साल में एक से दो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आराम से चेंज कर रहा है हम लोग ने जब काम स्टार्ट किया था तो हमें सख्ती से कहा जाता है कि कम से कम 2 साल टिको ठहरो स्टेबल हो मुझे बचपन में कहा जाता है कि रोलिंग स्टोन्स डोंट गेट स्टेबल
Yes.
ठीक है वो कॉन्सेप्ट खत्म हो चुका मेरे पास एक ही बच्चा ना बार बार आ रहा होता है कि यार मुझे जॉब चाहिए मुझे भाई तो ये अभी भेजा था मुझे और तेरे 3 महीने का बच्चा छोड़ के चला गया तो हम नेक्स्ट रिसोर्स आपको फ्री देंगे ठीक है एग्रीमेंट होता है हमारा वो लाइन लगी पड़ी हुई है सबसे अच्छा बिजनेस जो है उसमें एचआर के अंदर हायरिंग है और खासतौर पर आईटी टेक जितनी भी इंडस्ट्रीज हैं उनके प्रॉब्लम ये है आप भी माशाल्लाह से एक बड़ा सेटअप चला रहे हो आपको पता है टेक्निकल रिसोर्स हायर करना कितना मुश्किल होता है और खासतौर पर जो जनरेशन आ रही है वो चेंज जो एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं ना हम जो उनसे एक्सपेक्टेशन हमारी चेंज की वो नहीं दे रहे हमें और जो उन्हें
That's true.
हमसे एक्सपेक्ट है वो हम नहीं दे रहे उन्हें हमसे क्या चाहिए उन्हें चाहिए चिल एनवायरनमेंट चाहिए
Yes.
कोई माइक्रो
Good
मैनेजमेंट ना
representation.
करे टाइम के ऊपर नहीं आना तो इट्स अ वेरी बिग टॉपिक एक बहुत बड़ा
Hmm.
इशू है ये और इसको हम बहुत आराम से हम ये कह रहे हैं ना, देखिए तब्दीली आएगी और आके रहेगी, इसको आप चेंज नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि वो तब्दीली जिसकी हम बात कर रहे हैं दैट डिपेंड्स ऑन आवर टेक्नोलॉजी, और टेक्नोलॉजी इवॉल्व होगी, उसको हम आज तक नहीं रोक सके। आप कुछ भी
नहीं,
कर लें, उसको हम नहीं रोक सकते। अब लाइक AI इज हियर नाउ,
बिल्कुल
आएगा नहीं, आ चुका है,
आज
लोग कर रहे हैं। ठीक है? अब हमारे पास जो सॉफ्टवेयर आ रहे हैं, जो हम डेवलप कर रहे हैं इन हाउस, हमारा एक बड़ा सेक्टर जो है वो हमें AI के ऊपर जाना पड़ रहा है। हेल्थ इंडस्ट्रीज के अंदर एक दो जगह से हमारे पास आवाज़ आई है कि जी वी नीड एन ऑनलाइन टूल्स नाउ। इसी तरह एक वो बहुत मशहूर हमारा सॉफ्टवेयर है इस्लाम 360, वो AI बेस्ड हो गया। मेरे एक बहुत अच्छे दोस्त हैं मुफ्ती साहब, डॉक्टर जाकिर नायक के प्रोग्राम में उनके साथ गया था। मेरा मुफ्ती साहब आपकी तो हो गई छुट्टी। कह रहे क्यों? मैंने कहा हर किसी ने इस सॉफ्टवेयर के ऊपर जाके पता ले लेना, आपके पास कौन आएगा? हंसने लगे, कह रहे यार ये बात तो सही कह रहे हैं। तो जहाँ पे हम चीज़ों को ईजी कर रहे हैं, ईजी टू अप्रोच कर रहे हैं, वहाँ हम दूसरे मसाइल खड़े करेंगे, वो हम फोर्स ही नहीं कर पा रहे, वो इश्यूज आएंगे। तो ये हर चेंज डेफिनेटली हम उसको मना नहीं कर रहे, चेंज हमें करना पड़ेगा, जैसे मैंने कहा, अच्छा लगे या बुरा लगे, चेंज हमें करना है। बट वी हैव टू सी अदर थिंग्स के कौन से एंगल हैं जहाँ पे हमें नुकसान हो रहा है, उसको भी हमने कंट्रोल करना है। अदरवाइज वो अगर हाथ से निकल गए तो ऐसी चीज का कोई फायदा नहीं।
बिल्कुल
थैंक यू।
thank you. We're sorry. I think this is one topic we've only scratched the surface, and we can speak on this topic at length. But just to round up a couple of things Arif Saab said, which is that we were told by our elders or our seniors that a rolling stone gathers no moss. So we were expected to join a firm, stay there, and that firm, that organization was supposed to be like a second home or our family, right? कि यहाँ चले गए, unless something drastic happens, यहीं पे ही हम काम करेंगे, not in a negative way but in a positive way. Now we see a lot of shuffle and a lot of turnover in organizations. And I'll just wrap up actually. So thank you to each of you for taking out time and joining today's discussion. I think we need a part 2 on it. So thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
We just cover a little bit, not more.
Yes, just like I said, we've just scratched the surface. So hopefully
Yeah.
we'll speak.
Just to conclude, the those statements हैं, who wants change versus who wants to change. So I think इसका जो जवाब है वो लेना बहुत जरूरी है. So everybody wants change, but does everybody want to change? I think not really.
A big question.
Very good point.
This is a big question.
Very good point. So thank you again and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.